Welcome to Center Heist Productions. Please hit the likes and subscribe down below in your right hand corner. This is where you get Habs news and discussions on moves made by the Habs straight up. No BSing or no swaying by anybody else. We kind of go with the facts that are in place by hockey people. And myself and Bob, totally impressed with the first round. Totally impressed. Very happy, very all Habs fans, as the states. This I'm going to have to do a couple more parts because I have a limit time wise on each tape. So first round, this is totally first round discussion. Phenomenal. Um, this was exceptional. What more can you say? How the chips fell. This was excellent for us. We finally, and it's been a good 30 around there. 30 some odd years since we've had, for me, you can say we've had Richer and Kovalev. They don't even hit the category of what I'm talking about. And that is uh, Naslund and Lafleur. Lafleur being first, then Naslund. Naslund was your last superstar, prolific goal scorer. And Lafleur, of course, was for his time. Kovalev would have been next in our order of what we had in Montreal, and then Richer, but there was too much missing from. I was never sorry. I was a fan of Richer when he first came, but he underachieved so much, and I didn't like that he didn't show up, and he had this big frame that he just didn't know how to use, and wasn't always the firmest on his blades. And Kobe had all of the ingredients and just didn't play. If he would have given his 100% all the time, he would have been one of the great leaders of the league. I'm convinced of that, but he was definitely a top point producer, but not at the level and consistency that what we're talking about, stardom of Naslund and Lafleur. Montreal's waited a long time for this, and now it looks like, from what the critics say about Demidov, that this potentially could end that streak, and that would be so nice. I think it's a great move that he fell on our lap. Pleased as heck. I even like the second, the 21st, where we moved up from 26 yesterday in a trade up to 21st position. I like the guy we got there, Hage. Didn't expect it. I thought maybe they were looking at the French player that went just before, I think. And I do think that there's a lot, you hear Hughs interviewed by guys like Marinero. He's not going to tell you everything straight up of what the plan was. Marinero can put his spin on it. Other guys can put their spin on it because he was pushing for Demidov. That's great because Demidov was one of my two. Yes, I had Lidstrom first because I see Lidstrom as your Lindros, kind of a cross between Lindros and Leclerc. That's what I always projected, and I like that style of player. It would have given us that size. But I like Demidov because he brings back, again, point-wise, and fancy, the moves, the finesse-ness. He brings back the chance of having another Lafleur Naslund type player. So that's why I always said it was a bust if we didn't get Lidstrom or Demidov. I'm very pleased how it panned out. We knew. I was amazed that they were both not taking when it even got up to 4. In the first 3 picks, I was shocked because I know, yes, we heard rumor that Chicago was always leaning towards Linchenko, but when you heard all the reports continually coming out on Demidov, you had to wonder, would they use that thought? We could put Bedard and Demidov. What a 1-2 punch that would be. And I'm shocked they didn't bite for that. So I honestly thought, and that's why I had said I didn't even think Demidov or Lidstrom were going to be available to the Habs, honestly. I thought immediately, 2 would be Demidov to Chicago, and when they picked Linchenko, I was tickled. I was like, okay, now we got a chance at something here, possibly. And then I wondered, was that move going to sway Anaheim's original prediction? It doesn't seem to have. They shocked us all, and I know Seneca, you look that their clip should be the clip of the draft of the surprise on his face to go third day Anaheim. But they like those big guys, and we do too. We're trying to get to being as big, but we didn't have those options. We had to we had to work with what was falling down, and like I said, at least Demidov is not a Smurf. So, and it gives us a prolific type possibility of going back to having a star like Naslin being the last one. That would be so nice. So, nothing wrong there. So then you seen them take Seneca, and then you knew, wow, okay, we're going to get one of the two that we always wanted. And I was convinced that we didn't get one of these two guys. This draft was a bust for our first round pick. But seeing the two of them go down, and you knew Wardell previously, Montreal was probably had called him. He had mentioned it in the interview, just putting it out there. And of course, he probably wanted the farm, the kitchen sink, and everything else, just for Montreal to move up that one spot to ensure who they wanted. Because that's just the way Wardell is just a jerk, period, with Montreal. He just continually, between him and Carolina, I don't know if it's him more so, but he seems to have carried it on into Carolina, just his behavior in that approach with his interviews. And Carolina, I don't know if that's changed things over there because their owner. We'll see. However, so you knew, I was convinced that I had no shadow of a doubt that if Lidstrom was there, he was taking Lidstrom. And he did exactly what I thought. But I did not think Demidov. I did not think those three teams ahead of us would pass on him. I just thought, okay, it was one thing to happen with Michkov, but Michkov had a lot of red flags. But this guy's what the critics and experts projection and the way he's clearly spoken of, he doesn't have those red flags, and he has a better all-around game. And I think, wow, for them to have passed on him again. And I'm glad Montreal said, "Oh no, no, no." And I do think that those were the two first. I get a kick out of some people in their interviews thinking, and when he answered, "Oh yeah, that was always our plan. That if even we were at two, we were taking Demidov." I think he was not going to tell you the full story. He's going to tell you what you want to hear. He knows that certain interviewer was pumping Demidov all along. He's going to tell you what you want to hear. He's not going to tell you what actually is here. You got to use some common sense in this. So I do think, I'm tickled pink, don't get me wrong, because I got one of the two players I wanted. And like I say, when I look at them, they bring two different things. Lidstrom would have brought a Lindros, Leclerc type. This guy, Demidov, brings possibly what could be a Naslin, Lafleur type mix, right? And that would be nice to see. So maybe we get back to that point, I'm hoping. He's got a more consistent, well-rounded game. And then Naslin was always good that way. He even had a better defensive game than Lafleur. Lafleur was just more impact when you definitely needed that big goal. You were sure it was coming from him. You could almost put the money on if you were doing Vegas to make bets. That's what you did because you knew Guy would score. So you had two different styles, and I was happy to take whichever. The only thing I do know is now that we got Demidov, and I'm tickled pink. Now it's insulating him because although he's not a Smurf, thank God, he's a reasonable size, 6'1". He's a good, respectable size, so that's a bonus too. But I think when you look back at it, and we were all mad when we didn't take Michkov, but there were so many red flags, and we took Reinbacher. You look at Reinbacher when the critics and experts compare all the defensemen in this draft to Reinbacher. They said Dickinson was the best that his all-round game rated. He was the best that the critics had on. And they did say Reinbacher was still above him just a bit. Just a bit, they thought. Head-to-head, he was above him. So the Habs didn't do bad. with getting Reinbacher. So, those fools who wanted to condemn Reinbacher, well, that's not a true fan anyway. It's not the kid's fault. And he's going to come. It's almost as if we would have taken Mitchkov and we got a defenseman this year. It really amounts to the same, except you got a better offensive star in Demidov because he's got a way better rounded game than Mitchkov. Mitchkov doesn't have that defensive game and a bit of an attitude from what we understand. So you got a better quality player character-wise. And then you look at the trade that we traded up. So I'm tickle pink. So we traded up to get Hage, who we ended up with at 21. We moved from 26. Made a trade to get up to 21, and you knew they were targeting somebody. Again, they say when interviewed, if you think Hughs is going to give you the dirty, he says answers that Hage is the guy. I think Hage was one of the guys. I'm convinced of that, but I do think that that French player that went ahead of him, that guy that spends his time in boxing, I think they were on him, their eyes were on him too. Now, which one they would have picked first, I don't know. None of us will know that. It's the same as when it came down to Demidov and Lindstrom. I honestly think if you got the truth, none of us know that. And I don't know if we'll ever get the truth on any of that. They're not stupid. They got to hold their cards well. And Hughes holds his cards well. But there's nobody better in that situation than Jeff Gorton for a poker face. What a poker face. What a poker. I mean, I commend him. I just love it, the way this worked out. And anyway, so getting Hage, what a wonderful story with all the crap he went through a year and a half ago. His dad being a Montreal fan, they were from Montreal area, then moved to Ontario area, I believe, and was raised there. And, he, his dad was always a Habs fan and pushed Hage, hard to become an NHL player. And then to have that happen a year and a half ago, where his father passes away in a freak pool accident. What a story. I mean, the emotion that comes in it, if it doesn't crack you emotionally, there's something wrong with you. It's quite a touching story. And to see the kid, he just teared up. And, look at 5 or 6 weeks ago, when he was interviewed, he told that story that he wanted to play for the Habs. And to have that come true, what a story. And his dad would be so happy. That's a story and a half. And you look at the upside on that kid as well. Okay, it's probably going to take him a year longer, I believe, than Demidov coming to Montreal. Just to work on some kinks in his game, and he will. He's going to have to bulk up. They're both good size, though. At least they're not Smurfs. They're healthy size, and I do believe they're both top six players. We know Demidov is most likely a first liner, in my opinion. There's no doubt. Somebody made the comment out of the panel that they could see Slafkovsky, Suzuki, and Demidov being a line in the future when we're where we want to be. And I actually could see that. I could see the second line being Doc, Caulfield, and maybe it's this kid here, Hage, right? Because he looks like he could be a top six player. He's going to give somebody a run for the money because he's making that team. He's got the determination just to see. I mean, yeah, he started off shaky because he was present where that accident took with his father's death at the pool party, whatever it was. He took it hard, and he's still emotional. Who wouldn't be if you love your parents? And so he was shaky. He put up some points in the beginning of the year, but not. He had some shaky moments. Well, if you're getting over the loss of your parent at that young of an age, I commend this kid. Good character, strong character, and pulled it together. And as the season went on, he built up. His second half of the season was phenomenal. To come out of a situation like that of losing your dad, and his dad being a Habs fan, him being a Habs fan, and they got the dream come true. He's a Hab, and his father's probably smiling down. So quite an emotional thing. And yes, I do believe he's one. He definitely was. They were looking at him when they got that 21st pick. I just do believe in both circumstances, the fifth and that there's more to the story of who they were looking at. That's why, like I said, I had an order, and it was between Demidov and Lindstrom, and then it went to Seneki for me, and then it went to Vasiliev, and then Iginla. But I did say, for me, that fifth pick would have been a bust without it being Demidov or Lindstrom. Now I lean towards the tower, of course, because I like that type of muscle up front. But it's not a knock against Demidov, because Demidov brings something we haven't had in so very long, with Naslin being your last guy, and I will not go with the other guys. I want to go and put Riche and Kovalev into the conversation. Now Kovalev was much more complete than Riche. Even though Riche scored 50 goals, I get that. He was not complete. And there was a lot of his game missing for a big man. Yeah, he could chuck the knuckles when he had to. But body-wise, he didn't know how to use his frame. He was a little weak on his skates. And he underachieved in my books. But Kovalev was strong as heck and tried to get him off the puck. The only problem with Kovalev is inconsistency. So consistency with problems with those two. So to me, there wasn't anybody. The last time we've had a star, like a star player, was Mats Naslin and the player before him. And now, maybe after 30 some odd years, we finally got one. I'm hoping so. And from the reports, I think it's looking like we do have one. So for me, I'm quite pumped. I think this is going to be good, because I think Demidov, he'll finish out this next year in Russia, and then I think we could very well see him in Montreal the following season. Whereas I think Hage will be 2 years before we see him. So with that being said, an extra year that is added on to Hage's way up to Montreal. But I do think the notice is on now, because it's going to be a battle now. Who is the future of Montreal between Kapanen, Tuck, who else is there down there? Owen Beck, possibly, what's his name? The guy who didn't do too well, Heineman, and Machar. The notice is on, because now you've got, I think this Hage kid may have jumped in front of you, to be honest. And we know Demidov has. That's, to me, is hands down. I do foresee Demidov being on our first line. It's what is going to be our second line. And, I think, I've made a video there of who I do think the 5 players that it's make or break season for them, for us to know what we know. There's some serious talent there, but injury wise, we got 5 players that this year is kind of a do or die year. It's going to tell the tale if these guys are injury prone, and that's Doc, that's Newhook, that's Gooley, and it's Jacky. And I love these guys all, but they sure look like they're injury prone, and I sure hope they're not. I sure hope the worm turns, because if that's the case, that's going to set us back a bit, and it could open more doors. It's hard to say. But anyway, with that being said, great, phenomenal first round for us. Love it. These 2 guys, I'm sure, will be Montreal Canadiens in the future. Demidov, we know. That's a drawn conclusion. That's going to be a star. And Hage, I wouldn't knock him. I think he easily could be a second line player. So we'll see. Going to be a positive future for the Habs. Going to take it's a time away, but the problem is now I think that splash we seen yesterday, us moving up from, that might have been the splash we're going to get, because from us moving 26 to 21, so don't get your hopes up that there's going to be a big splash in free agency. It may not be there, because we know I wouldn't even deal with Wardell anymore. If I was the Habs, I'd say fine, because guess what? We got the talent. We're ahead of you in the park. So we don't need to deal with you. because he just seems to want to be a Nimrod with Montreal. And if Carolina wants to be that way too, the owner, well, hey, just move on, because we got to understand that. As I said before, I do think Natchez was the only one in free agency that would be worthwhile for us, and that's why we're still in the running. 3 teams, from what I hear, but I wouldn't count on it. I would have expected something to be done in a trade with that second draft pick team, and I'm glad we used it. To be honest, um, whether and what they have to do, they still sounds like in the talks, but I wouldn't count on it. And if you can't get Natchez, you're better off leaving the top six alone and not worry about it in 2025 when you get rid of some bodies that got to go and you free up some money. Then worry about it if you do. I do, however, think you may see some splashes in our bottom 6. That's where we can improve. So, there's so much that could happen with some other players being available. So don't expect the big top 6 splash. I would be shocked if it happened. But I would say expect the bottom 6. But what a success. That first round, I mean, I am so excited to have another start with what the expectations and the write-ups are on this kid. And they both are good character kids and both strong kids. So I like what I see coming. So that's going to be an end of this tape, and I will do a second part on. We didn't have any second round picks. We started off in the third round because we traded our second round pick away. So I'll get to the next list of the rest of the draft picks in our next episode. Thank you for joining me. Where'd you see it first here at Center Heights? Us giving you an in-depth little talk. And like I say, got to blow your mind. I love the character of Gorton and Hughs, and it was clear that draft day came and somehow Gorton took over the interviews, and what a poker face. And it was almost like to say, okay, with Kent Hughs, he's great at calling his cards, but maybe a smirk would have gave it away. So I don't think they wanted to risk it, and I think Gorton just pulled it like a charm. No wonder he built a good team in Boston and in New York. So hats off to the Habs. Go, Habs, go. I am pumped. Seen here at Center Ice Productions. We will catch you in the second part of this episode on the 2024 draft. Go, Habs, go. Be excited, guys. We have a star player. No Anderson Butts. And don't kid yourself. This Hage kid, I think he's going to be a lot more than what we suspect as well. I think great character kid, and who knows, there could be a serious ceiling for this kid to reach. I can see him being at least a second liner. Thank you for joining me. God bless. We'll catch you in the next one.